The way my parents talk about the house we're in makes it sound more like an asset than a home. It reminds me of the hasty way they sold the house I grew up in when it was time to escape. I feel that I don't have a physical home, and I fear that I never will. I fear the things I inherit of my parents, and one will be our ability to never settle. I left the home that I grew up in abruptly. I always knew it was temporary, and now I no longer know how to handle it. Should I scream? Should I cry? Should I emote in some way? I can't, because I realize diaspora is the most accurate it has ever been. When I first heard the word, I felt guilt. I had misguided the person that used it to describe me, but now I realize I've always lived this life. I never had a home, and my parents were forced out of theirs, such as I was. It's an endless cycle they believe are passing on to us as a method of survival. The world we live in is not one that has treated our family kindly. My parents believe we will receive the same treatment they did. I inherited their fear of money as I am face to face with words such as capital gain, income tax, and life trust fund. My parents' money is what will survive longer than their withered bones or my siblings and I. My parents are both self-made as they immigrated to a country that gave them nothing. They pride themselves on these dollars, completely controlled by a government that barely knows them. They value these dollars, and I can't even begin to imagine how big their minds must be as they think years in advance over how these dollars will develop and grow. They think about how much this house will cost and not how much it will be valued as a home. I fear that my youngest brother will grow to love this house. I was raised knowing the house I lived in was a bubble and nothing would last, but everything feels so permanent here. My parents' plans of liquidating all of it scares me, even though it is the most logical outcome for them. The most profitable outcome for all of us. I left Dubai 3 years ago, yet I'm only just processing the loss and implications of that sudden departure. It's always the country I grew up in, never my home country, because there's no possible way I could go back. The only connection I have with that place is a British school in the 40,000 dirhams my dad never paid. When I first moved to Canada, I didn't know how to connect with the country I left behind. I didn't know how to connect with what I lost. I had no culture set out and laid perfectly, as I was a blend of multiple. I went to a British school, had a Polish mother and an Iranian father, both speaking English and rarely their native tongues. My friends were Pakistani, Indian, Korean, Malaysian, Portuguese, and Spanish, yet their accents had an Anglo lilt and would often refer to themselves as from the UK before telling you that. There were those that were proud of their culture, but they never expressed it openly. It sometimes felt as though my year group was split in two. The true British with thick Cockney accents, skin white and hair blonde, the odd person of color here and there, but only if they were as British as everyone else. And the rest of the world. People who did not have fair skin, had accents that were either indistinguishable or too distinguishable, and focused on school because most of us did not have a green card when we graduated. There were a few who had parents who were citizens of the UK, so they would definitely be going back there for university. There wasn't this divide until secondary school. Before that, I mingled with everyone. My upbringing, however, feels mostly white now I look back on it. Maybe it's because my mother was with me for most of it, my dad acting as a faint figure due to his arduous work days, and only appearing as a source of amusement. My best friends were two white girls. They were both British. I loved them, and I learned a lot from them. I began to take my tea with milk, expecting it to be creamy. I began to change my accent and understand the heavy British undertones taken by others. I began to tie my hair the same way, wear the same shoes, play with the same toys, and because of this, I always thought I preferred tea with milk. Ever since we moved to Canada, the tea has not been the same. Twinnings of London, creamy vanilla extract with milk and sugar, it never tastes as good as it used to. And it wasn't until my grandmother showed us a shop in Hamilton that I began to realize why. My mom always told me the tea here wasn't the same. It tasted worse. It would never be as good as it used to be, but I couldn't understand. She'd always say how much she missed the old one. We went to that shop, which turned out to sell Middle Eastern goods, a halal store. I saw the brand Al-Okazeh on a bottle of soda and bolted to tell my brother. He didn't understand, so I sped up to my mom, and she didn't think I was telling the truth. She thought it was unlikely they'd actually have the tea of the brand, but we went to the tea section, and towards the end, on the second to bottom shelf, there it was. Black tea, Al-Okazeh. We were ecstatic. We took 2 boxes of 25 packs. Once we were home, Mum made a whole tray of it. Whenever I grabbed a glass, I gulped it in one swig. I was shocked by how much I missed the taste, how good it felt, how refreshing and familiar. It wasn't until tonight, when I was searching the entire kitchen for those boxes. My mother had hid them away somewhere, and I had already heated the kettle, but I couldn't find a single one. Where had she hidden them? I told myself it's all right. I'll just have the Twinnings, as they were stuffed behind the microwave, but the only one accessible. Once I dipped the tea bag in and poured the milk, the first sip has never tasted so bitter on my tongue. I have myself realizing I never found comfort or nostalgia in this tea. I forced myself to think that it reminded me of home. I forced myself to like it because I believed there would be nothing else that could replicate that feeling. And now I'm left with this disgusting mug, continuously craving the tea I grew up with because I now know it's possible to find it in this culture blend of a country. Will it always be like this? Will I always feel this way?